I just want to see my balance. The fluorescent lights of Grand Crest Bank buzzed overhead as Evan Carter pushed through the glass doors, his 4-year-old daughter Lily asleep against his shoulder, her small fingers curled around the collar of his faded jacket. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. He hadn't slept in 31 hours. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. A half-eaten granola bar he'd found in his coat pocket. But Lily had eaten. That was what mattered. The bank was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. Marble floors gleaming under careful lighting. The smell of polished wood and quiet money hanging in the air. Evan didn't belong here, and he knew it. His shoes had a crack along the left sole that let in the cold. His jeans were worn thin at the knees, and the dark circles under his eyes told a story he was too tired to explain. He walked to the nearest teller window, shifting Lily carefully so her head stayed rested on his shoulder, and placed a worn, cream-colored bank card on the counter. "I just want to see my balance," he said quietly, trying not to wake her. The teller, a young woman named Monica, glanced at the card, then at him, and offered the kind of polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She typed something, frowned, typed again, and then her expression shifted into something unreadable. She picked up her phone without a word. Evan thought he'd done something wrong. He thought maybe the account had been closed, that this final hope, this card his late wife, Sarah, had pressed into his hand 8 months before she died, whispering, "Keep it, Evan, just keep it." "Promise me," had come to nothing, like so many things had. He was 3 weeks behind on rent. The eviction notice was taped to his door at home. He had $362 in his checking account. He had come here because he had nowhere else to go, and because a dying woman had asked him to trust her. And he had, because he had always trusted her with everything. A woman in a tailored navy blazer appeared from behind a frosted glass partition, her name badge reading Margaret Holt, Senior Branch Manager. She was composed, professional, the kind of woman whose face rarely showed surprise. But when she looked at Evan, then at her tablet, then back at Evan, something cracked slightly in her expression. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "would you mind following me?" He followed her past the teller windows, past the velvet rope, past the eyes of 2 other customers who watched curiously, into a lounge he hadn't known existed behind the main floor. Leather chairs, a low table, real plants, the kind of quiet that cost money to maintain. She gestured for him to sit. He did, adjusting Lily against his chest, and she sighed softly in her sleep, her small mouth slightly open. Margaret sat across from him and folded her hands. "Mr. Carter, this card is linked to a dormant trust account," she said, her voice measured. "Can you tell me where you received it?" He told her everything. About Sarah, about the cancer diagnosis 4 years ago, how she'd fought it quietly and fiercely while he worked, double shifts, and she raised Lily in the hours he was gone. About how she had never told him much about the bone marrow donation, just that she had matched with someone, a little boy, and that she'd wanted to help, and that it had worked. About how she had smiled when she told him that, the particular smile she saved for things that mattered deeply to her. About how she died on a Thursday in March, with Lily's drawing of a sun taped above, her hospital bed and Evan's hand in hers. He told Margaret about the card because she asked and because he was too exhausted to guard himself. Margaret listened without interrupting. When he finished, she excused herself and returned 12 minutes later with a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as David Okafor, the bank's senior estate liaison. David placed a folder on the table and spoke carefully, watching Evan's face as he did. The account, he explained, had been established by the Harmon Family Foundation 11 years ago. Nathaniel Harmon, a billionaire industrialist whose son had been diagnosed with a rare blood disorder at age 7, had been searching for a compatible bone marrow donor for 3 years when Sarah Carter, then Sarah Malik, before her marriage, had registered as a donor and matched perfectly. The transplant had saved the boy's life. Nathaniel Harmon, a man who measured gratitude in action rather than words, had immediately established a trust in Sarah's name. She had been contacted, had met with the foundation's lawyers, had agreed to the arrangement, on one condition, that the trust remained sealed and untouched until her death. She had not wanted money to change the life she was living. She had not told Evan because she knew him, knew that he would feel strange about it, would worry, would want to talk about it endlessly, and she had simply wanted their life to remain their life for as long as she was in it. The account had grown over 11 years of careful investment. It now held 78.4 million. Evan sat very still. Lily stirred against his shoulder, blinked, looked up at him with her mother's eyes, and said "Daddy" in the soft, formless way of children waking from deep sleep. He pressed his lips to her forehead and held her tighter and did not speak for a long moment. Margaret Holt, who had spent 22 years managing wealthy clients without once being moved by the work, found that she could not look directly at the two of them. Two estate attorneys arrived within the hour, summoned by David, professional and efficient, and careful with Evan in a way that people had not been careful with him in a long time. They explained the trust structure, the provisions Sarah had put in place, a substantial portion designated specifically for Lily's education and future, the remainder at Evan's full discretion, and they explained what the next steps would look like and how quickly things could be arranged. Margaret walked Evan to the exit herself when everything was done for the day, Lily riding on his hip, a folder of documents tucked under his arm. At the door she stopped him. "Mr. Carter," she said, and he could see that she meant it. "I'm sorry for the way you were made to feel when you first came in today. You deserved better than that." Evan looked at her for a moment. He thought about Sarah, about the years she had carried this quietly, about the bone marrow she had given to a stranger's child without asking for anything in return, except the right to keep living simply and lovingly in the life she had chosen. He thought about 362 and a cracked shoe sole and a granola, bar and 31 hours without sleep. "She would have said it worked out the way it was supposed to," he said finally, and walked out into the afternoon light with his daughter and the truth that love, even after it leaves, has a way of staying. If this story moved you, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel Kindness True Stories, where every story is a reminder that goodness is never wasted, and kindness always finds its way home.